are many things that will interest everyone as the Yuletide, of course, we're already in the season. Today is the 24th. But there are so many issues. But let's begin with this conversation in Abuja. Malpe.
Well, thank you, Ayo. We have with us Dr. Onoha Nachi, who is an energy expert. We recall that in the last couple of days, the electricity sector has been challenged from workers going on strike and somehow the grid powering down as a result of, we don't know what happened there, to be very honest, but we just know that as a result of the strike, it would seem that there was a grid collapse. Maybe, equipment was put off, and we know that, we're just beginning to power up. So I don't know how it is in your area, but we wonder if disputes like this, the kind of dispute that saw an entire country facing a blackout, that happened just late this year, whether it's going to linger into 2020. How far is far? We have the guest with us here this morning to put a light on some of these issues as we enter 2020. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Thank you, Okbe. It's my pleasure being around.
Yes, it's our pleasure to have you here. Can you give us a bird's eye view of where we are in the electricity sector more specifically? I know energy is very broad, but more specifically in the electricity sector, where would you say that we are? How far are we gone with generation? How is the transmission company, which is held by the federal government, doing? And are the discos up in their game? Because we always understand that they're the weak link. It's always between the discos and the trancos.
Well, there are various perspectives that we can look at. If we're going to do more like a review of where we are in the electricity sector, there are key factors that you take into consideration. Just like you mentioned, you talked about the generations, the transmissions, and the distribution companies. The question we ask is, a typical American will say, what get measured, get done. You ask ourselves, for the past 4 years or for the past 5 years, how many megawatts have we been able to add? If we have added, so how is it going about? And what is the target? Did we set a target for ourselves and saying, okay, in every 2 years, we must add this volume or this quantum of megawatts? And it's only when we begin to go in that dimension of measuring, then we begin to say, okay, there's an incremental change or not that. Not where, when we were in the rainy season, because the hydro generate more powers, we seem to have more powers. We move out of the rainy season, the dams dries up a little bit, and we begin to have this. And let me pick it up from the generation companies precisely, so we'll get a point. If we want to measure that and really see, there are various agreements that are attached to the generations industry, to the generation sector of the electricity. We ask ourselves, what has happened to the power purchase agreements? What is the compliance for those that have signed, and how many has it done? We also go back to look at the powers we have, which are mostly gas dependent. We look at the gas purchase agreement. We look at the gas transportation agreement. All these agreements are determinants that actually encourage the generations, mostly those gas dependent. And we also look at how...
Yeah, but for generation, we understand that we have a lot of redundant capacity, that the generation companies are able to produce, is it about 12,000 megawatts? Is that true?
It cannot be exactly true. We can say the generation capacity we have as a nation is above 12,000. But the generatable capacity that is possible, we have power plants that have been built that have not been turned on because of gas, because of locations where they are located. Those power plant capacity can be calculated and put together as generation capacity of the nation. But how many of those plants are on? Some of them are not on. That's why I was taking to those gas agreements that determine whether those...
Yeah, and the GenCos also had a dispute recently with the bulk trader, Embed.
So the structure we have as a nation makes it that the bulk trader is supposed to acquire the entire powers from the GenCos. But of recent, we're having a critical issues, which is very annoying. When you see a discos rejecting loads, and the bulk traders has purchased this power and is supposed to transfer it back to the discos according to a particular ratios that have been agreed. And you see a disco rejecting load. Why are they rejecting load? Is best known to them. But I realized clearly during the privatization exercise, the discos came into existence based on a simple principle. your ability to reduce losses, your ability to reduce power losses, call it technical losses, call it commercial losses, call it collection losses.
We've jumped somewhere now. I really want us to take it step by step, because what we're trying to do, is to provide a bird's eye view. So in terms of generation, of course, there are issues there. You say we need to review some of the agreements, but there is capacity in the generation side of things. Is that right?
Yes.
What about transmission? We know that there was a big dispute. For a long time, we're told that, generation side is doing well. The transmission company did not quite have the capacity to wheel out as much as generation was doing. There was some dispute. The then minister, we have a new minister now, then Minister of Power Works and Housing, insisted that the transmission company could wheel out as much as 7,500 megawatts of electricity. We do not know if they've been able to wheel out that amount.
They can do more than that as of today, though.
They can?
They can, comfortably.
So what exactly is the problem? Is the discourse then the weak link?
The dead link. If you call it the weak link, you're being economical with the facts. When the privatization was done, the discourse came into power on assurance that the ATC and TC laws will be kept in place, which is the ability to reduce your technical, commercial, and collection losses. And every of them that acquired our plant gave an indication of the percentage of reductions that will come every year, every 2 years, and all that. This were the grant they were allowed to. There was no any other grant that this privatization was done. This was the basic grant. And now you have taken up this asset, and you are still busy collecting, you're still busy complaining that why I can't take more load is because I'm having losses. If that is a private business, if actually is a private business, you won't be complaining about that. You must do everything humanly possible to make sure your collections are up to date. And it's only when you block those leakages in collections from technical commercials, then you have a fruitful transaction. Because if we say, let's go back, and over the years, for the past 5 years, you will see, yes, transmission has done reasonable, but there are still more things to be done. Clearly, more things to be done. We are supposed to move from the maximum transmission line of 330 kVA to even up to the 760 kVA, which will carry a bigger load. And have anything been done about that? The study has not even been done, not to talk about the construction. And these are things that the international development agencies has given funds for. We have contribution from World Bank, we have contribution from African Development Bank, we have contribution from the Japan Group and co. Then it becomes a concern on how are we going about all this as a nation. And now that we have a new minister who is just assumed office, it is very important for us to take a critical review of the whole system. First and foremost, let's look at the generation, which is very critical, because if you don't generate, you can't do anything about it. Now, as a nation, we should move into the mixed energy sectors, where we have all forms of generation being, so that when you have a down time in one, another generation platform can support that. But if you look at this critically, you see there's a controversy between the Ministry of Power and the Ministry of Water Resources. Let's say we're doing dams. The Ministry of Water Resources will say, we own the dams, we own the waterways. You can't do it. Oh, no, we need our permission. That crisis continues to exist. I don't think out of the 12 river basins, there's no river basin that exists that doesn't have a clear water front that can be used for dams. And each of these dams that the river basin can put together can generate up to 1,000 megawatts. Or 300 or 500, no matter the case. When you aggregate these contributions, it becomes a pool that will increase our generation capacity. But you know what? The interministerial rivalry between Water Resources, Ministry of Powers, just for sake of studies alone, they keep fighting over something. Everybody wants to claim dominance on that. Then if we can get that review clearly and make sure this, and look at the various licenses that have been given to several individuals, organizations that have indicated intent to generate power. I'll take you to a typical example. If you take the Ajekuta evacuation point, which has capacity to evacuate up to 7,000 megawatts, that as of today, we only have 2 power plants that contribute to that evacuation plant. The Gregu 1, Gregu 2, and the Ajekuta plant, 3 of them. The Ajekuta plant does about 15 megawatts, which it contributes, and the other ones do between 400 and 3 something, and that's what they contribute. Now, this entire area that are supposed to be used for power plant buildup because of the advantage, gas, evacuation, and coal, has been taken by people that obtain licenses, and they're doing nothing, absolutely nothing. And if government were serious about it, those areas should be first cleared. So we'll begin to bring people, investors that has capacity that can build a plant. And that place will show that the contribution to the national grid will come into. And by the way...
Yeah, but I mean, if all of these people are generating and we don't have the... Well, you say that now the transmission company has the capacity to even wheel out more than 7,500 megawatts. You call the discos the dead link.
The dead link.
That's a very strong term to use.
I can defend it
because they're the
day.
ones who interface directly with the consumers. Are we being fair to them? Because they have said that there are a lot of things hampering their own side of the agreement, that pricing is one of them. They're not able to, you know, charge, and electricity prices have been due for a review, even though consumers, of course, you know, think otherwise. And they also say that, look, we're yet to see any serious commitment by the discos to ensure that consumers have meters that they can actually use to ensure that they're only paying for what they consume.
Okay. Let me take you a clear analysis of the discos so that you will understand that better. Why I call them that dead link in the chain until we do something about it. A typical distribution company is like a business that you set up. You want me to use your service, and you don't want a means of measuring what I use out of your service. It should be paramount to you so that you get your money out clearly at the right time. And that's the way you make money. And even when you have had that particular sector for that particular service for very long, which is the metering system, glory be to God that NEC came and then began to license the metering assets providers. That is a little breakthrough to it. Why I say a little break to that is the way the licensed asset providers still operate does not give them the leeway. And the
leeway to do what?
Okay, a typical example is there should be a unified metering system for the country, a clear unified metering system. I don't have to be in Ibadan to buy Ibadan meters. I can get my meters anywhere and install it anywhere. What the discos owes me is for installations. That's what they owe me, because this will guarantee the billing system. Now, we don't have a unified metering system. The one in Ibadan wants to have, oh, this is the kind of meter I want. No. But the moment you have a unified metering system where I live in Abuja, I own a house in my village, I can buy my meter from Abuja here. It doesn't matter which of the discos I'm going to put into. We put all of them on a particular software and they run clearly. And that makes it easy, unified. So that anytime, anywhere, it becomes easy to do. Now, getting back to the disco proper and that area, if we solve the metering systems, we'll go back and see what is the level of asset investment by the discos. You want to make money out of it. You cannot expand a business where you're not investing in that business. It is your responsibility to invest, to take this electricity to where it is needed. And once you take it to where it is needed, because they have failed to invest in the asset expansions, and that's why they are rejecting load. Because when you invest in your asset expansion, these goods will now, this electricity will now begin to reach where it's supposed to reach. And as consumers begin to take it, you take more load. If you don't expand your road network where your electricity can get to, how can you increase on your load? All you are trying to say is to make sure, oh, I want to just give the electricity here. These are the people I'm sure I'm collecting. Who told you you're not sure of that? Can't you expand? Can't you be innovative? Can't you be creative? Why are you limiting yourself?
I sincerely wish that the discos were here to answer for themselves, you know, in terms of what exactly their challenges are. But we also, I remember that just a few days ago, we had a conversation on this electricity matter, and I remember that one of the guests in the studio was saying that we haven't done the privatization as properly as we ought to do it. Do you think it's a process that needs to be revisited?
The good part of it is that I was deeply involved in the power sector reforms, the power sector review and the privatization exercise. When we started the power sector reforms and reviews and privatizations, first and foremost, the first recommendations, they should go and bring down document. It was under the National Council of Privatization, which was headed by the then Vice President. The first recommendation that was done was only the GENCO should be privatized. The DISCO were not inclusive. That was the first recommendation. There's a paper on that. And there were reasons behind that. One of the key reasons behind that was the economy cannot carry all of them at the same time. And the experience will not flow all at the same time. So you look at when you're doing a privatization on the 6 generation companies and the 12 DISCOs. The recommendation was just to do the GENCOs alone. Now, we were looking at where every investor that comes, you borrow money from the bank, there's a lending obligor to every organization. As of the time you're acquiring it, you've already exceeded your lending obligation. So there's no institution that can borrow you money again. That becomes an issue. So we said, let's look at what our economy can carry based on our GDP pricing at that point in time. And this was this. And it became political. And when it became political, they said, no, let's do everything together. People like us as professionals rejected it vehemently. I wrote a report about it and I said, hell no. But you know what? The political will always try to drive the economic will. And we made some adjustments, and when the DISCOs were included for the privatizations and all that, there was one recommendation that is keeping us in this position. There's a recommendation that was made, which was thrown out. If you look at the contract agreement that was drafted and the one that was eventually signed, they're not the same documents. I have the two. I have read it back to back. In the first version of that document that was prepared, it was meant that the revenue from the privatization, because of the expected consigns that all these institutions, all these organizations that they're acquiring must have exceeded their lending capacity, their borrowing capacity. Now, let this revenue from this be kept in an account. With CBN, it shouldn't go to the federation account to be spent anyhow. It should be kept in an escrow account where, after acquisition, if they have financial difficulties, they can come back to CBN and borrow at a single-digit rate, not coming to give them a bailout. No. And this money was pushed into one account, and nobody can give account what happened to it. And I wish the federal government can say, where's the revenue from that privatization? Where did it go to? Who spent it? How was it spent? Because these were recommendations that would have stopped the nation from, dishing out this bailout. As of today, we have exceeded 1.3 trillion on bailout to the same industry. And for the past 15 years that the industry was existing before this, we never injected 1.3 trillion. We never. So
it looks like we're desperate right now. We're desperate for a solution.
So when you talk about the review, I think it's necessary. I think people like us should begin to speak out what happened during the privatization period. There were certain misnomer that happened in BPE, misnomer. And what I call misnomer is, if you pick up the EOI, the expression of interest that those that wanted to bid, and the actual people that bid, they're not the same. Along the line, when the interest begin to rise, political interest begin to rise, most of the original bidders were now beginning to attach to one political group, one political this and this.
Technical capacity.
No, not technical, because this is political capacity.
No, what I'm saying is, I remember that, what we heard was that some of the so-called political groups now had to look for technical partners, so to speak. A lot of the technical partners left them afterwards.
They're not the same. When we started the privatization, criteria were defined, and those criteria were standard and modest to any place in the world. Now, in the process, expression of interest were called for. Companies were pre-qualified. And after that pre-qualification, we were expected to go into the bid process proper. But what I'm trying to... I
want to interrupt you because I know that we're going to be out of time very soon.
Okay.
What I want to hit right now is the way forward. You were saying we'll have to revisit that privatization.
Yeah, clearly.
It's the only way we can move forward. If we revisit it, what are we going to be telling the DISCOs? I mean, are we going to be revoking contracts? Are we going to be revoking licenses? What are we going to be doing?
You know why the privatization seems to be mostly the DISCOs part, clearly? Privatization, the notion we had was there'll be foreign direct investment. I can tell you clearly, every investment that happened that happened along the 12 discos that was privatized were local. There was no one dime dollar that came from any place in the world. So it was a local fund.
They said it was deliberate to ensure that Nigerians, also participated.
It can be deliberate. There should be a limit. There should be a percentage. You don't close the sector with the total fund of the economy. If you're saying Nigerians should participate, okay, 20%, 30%, 40%, and those that have had experience on how these things are done, if you don't have, if you're coming in to provide service, you only provide because you're paid.
Did you think it should list on the Nigerian Stock Exchange? Maybe that'll be one way they can raise funds, since they seem to be cash strapped.
You cannot list when you don't have a revenue stream that's positive. You cannot list.
Not even with the promise that you could be positive.
No, you cannot list on that. You must see your cash flows, and your cash flows must indicate positivity. So you can't list a debt-related companies in the stock market. Who's going to buy the shares about that? I know you won't, and I will not. So.
You will not invest in any of our discos?
No, I'm not saying the disco. A debt.
No, I'm just saying right now, looking at the discos and where they are and the potential the Nigerian market has, as an investor, will you be willing to take the risk to say, I'm going to inject funds here because I know that given the right circumstance and given the right amount of inflow into this company, they can actually make a profit?
It's not a company that you're investing, but if the management structure still remains the same, if the ideology still remains the same, I will not. I'm very clear about it. So to
you, there are a lot of things that need to be done within the discourse.
A lot that need to be cleaned up. I heard the Senate President talking about reviewing it. Hey, if they call that call for a public hearing, people like us will come and give them what they need to know and what it should be. But like you asked the question on the way forward. The way forward is very simple. We should begin to set a target. We should begin to set the parameters from the GENCO to the transmission to the discourse. We have to set a target and says, in every 2 years, we must increase by this megawatt. In every 2 years, our transmission lines was moved from how many kilometers to this number of kilometers. In every 2 years, this is what the discourse is supposed to. The number of metered home must go from this. When we start measuring it and put measures that can tell, if you don't comply to this and you don't meet it. We have ministers that have stepped into office and run a 4-year tenure in office, and you didn't add a megawatt. You should bury your face in shame, because that's part of your job. Your job description is, as a minister for power, the generation must increase, the transmission must also increase, and the distribution must also increase.
Well, we'll certainly be looking for this current minister to ask him just how many megawatts he intends to add before he leaves. But beyond that, perhaps how many will be reaching the homes of Nigerians as 2020 approaches. We have to thank you for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning. Dr. Onoha Nachi is an energy expert. Sunrise Daily continues in a moment. Please stay with us.